All right. Welcome into Back Porch Sports. My name is Wes Blankenship. A little bit different show today. I've got some guests with me for a pretty exciting reason. Going around the screen, if you're watching the videos, Jason Butt, John Michaels, and Jamal Jones. And we have a pretty exciting announcement. And I think in this era of sports media coverage, when guys like us are without a full-time opportunity, we still have an obligation to people like you that follow us and enjoy our work. So today I'll let John Michaels announce what's happening, because he sent the tweet out that got this ball rolling and reached out to Jason and I. And with that, I'll hand it over to John.
Well, Wes, first of all, what you've built with Back Porch Sports has been really awesome. Coffee Town, obviously a viral sensation, but I think all of us, and not just the three of us, but guys in media in general, we have seen an influx of people being let go from the positions that they're at. Media companies are downsizing because, quite frankly, they're losing advertising money at a time when sports aren't really being played. They're finding ways to cut corners. They're finding guys that'll take jobs for cheaper than what some of us may have been making, or they're just deciding to go into automation where they're playing sports radio or stuff from other parts of the country, which, let's be honest, if you tune into a local sports station, you read a local sports writer, or you watch the local news, you want to hear about your teams. So I thought about this, and I'll be honest, it's not a brand new idea. It's something I've seen multiple people do around the country. A good buddy of mine down in Miami has started something like this about 3 years ago. But I reached out to two guys in the business who unfortunately were dealing with some of the same things that I was doing at Wes and Jason. Jamal is kind of our business mind. Him and I go way back. He's actually the person that got me into radio almost 17 years ago. He was the one that said, you need to be talking about sports daily. But we've decided to collectively join and start our own thing. So instead of getting your media from 10 or 15 different places, you're going to be able to come right now to tacklermedia.com. tacklermedia.com, and you're going to have podcasts, you're going to have live shows, you're going to have articles, and we're going to cobble together kind of the best group that we can, but it's going to start with the three of us. When I've read Jason for years, he's really good at what he does. Wes is one of the more entertaining people I've ever watched on TV. I was lucky enough to do television with him a bunch, and I've been in this market 16 years. So we want to take the Southeast by storm. We want to take the Southeast, kind of what Barstool has done in the Northeast. We're not going to be as off the rails as they are, but we're going to give you the sports coverage you deserve here. We're not going to candy coat anything. We're not going to sugarcoat anything. We're going to get you the insight that we've always had before, but this is going to be your one-stop shop for everything you need Southeastern sports.
I love it. I'm so fired up about it, and we've been talking about this for several weeks now, working on a name, working on our plan and what we're going to be doing and what kind of content we're going to be providing to everybody. And, this is just a glimpse. This episode of the podcast today is going to be released at the same time as some really good online subscription content that you can read at tacklermedia.com. We've got a Twitter account and a YouTube page as well, where you're watching this video. If you're watching the video, the audio is currently on my podcast, Back Porch Sports, which will be a part of a larger podcast network that falls under the Tackler Media umbrella. Jason and John will be rolling out their own shows in the weeks and months ahead that do something a little bit different. Obviously, I talk a lot about college football, but I've got the Coffee Town angle, a lot of digital social media content that attempts to be funny. Sometimes it is. And sometimes that actually succeeds at doing its job and making people laugh. So that'll be what I'm doing. And Jason and John will be rolling out their own kinds of shows that do something a little bit different. And what excites me about this initiative and this start is, like John mentioned, we all have a different background. We all have a different skill set in sports media. And we're going to use those skills to the best of our abilities. And we know we have loyal followers in each one of you, and we're going to get that rolling. So I will ask Jason now. Jason, as we've been talking about this, what's your mindset about us starting this and starting up a pretty exciting team, and where do you see it headed?
To me, it's just exciting to kind of be in control of something. For my whole career, I have, been, working for somebody else, writing for somebody else, and not necessarily had that freedom of control, and to work with, two people I've known and admired, and you and John, and of course Jamal, getting to be able to meet him. That's awesome, and to have his insight, especially from the business side of things. The way I want to approach this is I want to keep doing what I was doing, at my previous job. I want to continue to write those in-depth features. What's great in a way is I don't necessarily have to limit myself to the Falcons. So I can head over to another team. We can go to Atlanta United, the Hawks, the Braves, provide that kind of great written content. And then also provide some narrative storytelling, which is what I want to do on my particular podcast. Take people to the place where they aren't able to go. I think one of the exciting things about this profession that I've always enjoyed is taking the fan, the reader, and in this case, a listener, to the locker rooms, somewhere where they're not going to get the kind of information you're just going to see on a day-to-day, game-to-game, week-to-week basis by just watching the game or attending the game. Anybody can see those things play out on television or at the stadium, but what's going on when that's not happening? What's the what went behind a certain play that turned out to be the catalyst for something good or bad in a game? What is a player's day-to-day like when they're not at the team facility or at the clubhouse? There's so much information that we can provide our readers and our listeners that I think we can provide a great service, within this city and ultimately down the road, hopefully more than just regionally. This is something that I really envision, based on this model that we have set up, could ultimately be something that encompasses a wide variety of angles in sports, not just locally, not just regionally, but perhaps down the road on a national level. But obviously we want to stick to the bread and butter right now as we start with Atlanta and everything Atlanta and this area and the SEC, ACC when it comes to college sports, because we know there's a big driving consumer base who live and die by these sports. And quite frankly, as I'm sure everybody here is thinking, we can't wait for these sports to get back so we can get back into kind of living through these nice distractions that have been provided to us on a day-to-day basis, whether it's a pandemic or not.
Yeah. And Jamal, as we've been talking about this plan and what we envision it to be and what we all bring to the table as reporters and media members, I think the thing that's really exciting is I just, as Jason said, being able to control what we're doing. And that's not to say that we haven't had editorial freedom in the past, but there is something fun about an entrepreneurial effort like this. And the reality is we all have experience in the media, being those reporters and being working for those media sites. But now, we're just like anyone in our audience that's listening to us. So I like that we're able to be on both sides of that fence. We have contacts and we have the ability to reach out and tell those stories, but we're also relating to everything that's going on in sports right now. And there's a lot happening, but we're able to relate to those things just like a normal fan would be. So Jamal, from a business standpoint, what do you see from this team here and what excites you about what we're trying to accomplish? Hold on one second, Jamal.
Okay.
All right, I got you now.
Okay. For starters, just a makeup of your various experiences. You focusing so much in video, John with audio, Jason with written print. Just the strengths that you guys bring independently, I think, is so great. Second, I think there's an opportunity in this market that is, from a media standpoint, where sports hasn't really been fan-centric, audience-centric, and you guys talk about giving audience and sports fans a peek behind the huddle, or an invitation into the huddle, a peek behind into the locker room. I think that is so valuable. There's so many undercovered sports stories in the city that just don't get the attention they deserve. I think you guys have the voice, the reach, and the experience to really give those stories the correct amount of platform and attention, and then educate and invite the fan into that experience. I don't hear anything.
We have plenty of time at the moment, so we figured we might as well make the most of it, right? So Jamal, I understand you have some questions for us, and I think the fun thing about this opportunity for our followers and our audience, we'll be rolling out, like I said, a print platform on tacklermedia.com. That'll be a newsletter. That'll be some online articles in print, but you can also follow at Tackler Media on Twitter. We'll be launching an Instagram as well. But we're going for quality over quantity as we come out of the gate here. And you can turn to us for, up to date kind of news of the day when something big happens, but we'll also be focusing on giving you those in-depth pieces that help you get to know the athletes that you watch and get to know the teams that you watch and kind of experience those things in a different manner. And like Jamal has said, we all bring a little bit of a different flavor to the table when we cover those things. So Jamal, without much further ado, just to help people get to know each of us a little bit better, I think we all have a different audience. There's certainly some overlapping there, but I think we could all serve everyone a little bit better by just telling them who we are. And Jamal has some questions for us, and some of them are about sports, some of them are about us. And let's get it going.
So I want to start with Jason. Jason, do you remember your first sports memory?
First sports memory. So this is pretty crazy. I was maybe 5 or 6 years old. Now, my dad was is a big Michigan Wolverines fan. And so I, for some reason, remember Michigan playing Florida State in a non-conference game in maybe 1990 or 91. And Florida State beat the ever-living crap out of Michigan. And we were in like a hotel room or something. And my dad's just losing his mind. Now, that's the one I can like vaguely remember. But really the Fab Five are probably where I can actually remember who they were, what they did. I can remember that season when they were all freshmen, and that NCAA tournament run when they were the 6th seed. That was a really cool moment, really father to son. Obviously when you have a dad who's in the sports, those are things you connect over. And so, my childhood was really built on Michigan athletics, even though I grew up right outside Athens, Georgia. And just because of him and the Fab Five I'd say the Fab Five, but really the first memory was just Florida State. I mean, I can't remember the score of that game, but it was something crazy. Like it was an embarrassing game for Michigan.
That is awesome. John, I'm pretty sure you have a lot of memories tied back to Florida State as well. But John, what was your first sports memory?
It's funny, to answer Jason's question, it was 51-31 was the final. It was 1991. Miami beat Florida State that year, 17-16, and wide right won, which happened to be my 17th birthday. So my memories are kind of the same. But to go back, my first sports memory, and many people that follow me on Twitter know that I love the University of Miami maybe more than I love my own wife and kids. And part of that's just growing up. And I say that because they're not listening here right now. But and she actually knows that. My first sports memory was 1980. Miami was playing in the Peach Bowl, which was at the old Fulton County Stadium in downtown Atlanta, way before it was as prestigious as a bowl as it is now. And they were playing Virginia Tech. And it's funny that they're playing them. I'm 6 at the time, and I was more into cartoons and diving in the pool than I was watching sports. And my grandfather, may he rest in peace, he kept talking to me all week. Biggest game Miami's played in 20 years. And I didn't know what the hell he was talking about. And he made me sit down and watch some quarterback named Jim Kelly, some coach named Howard Schnellenberger, and Miami played in their first bowl game. I think it had been about 12 or 13 years since they had been in a bowl game. And they beat Virginia Tech, I don't know, 27-14, somewhere like that. And that was where my love for the University of Miami was built, because my grandfather made me sit down as a 6-year-old and watch football. And from that point on, it was like, okay, when does Miami play again? Because I know what it does for my grandfather. All of a sudden, my mom started to love the program. They brought the city of Miami together when we were going through a lot of racial injustices down there, kind of the same thing that we're going through in 2020. But that, for me, was the first memory.
Fantastic. Wes, same question to you.
So I was born in Savannah and was kind of outside of the footprint of a lot of major sporting events, but you couldn't help but know about the Braves in the early 90s, and that was my team from day one. And just learning about Chipper Jones as he made his way to Atlanta, and really I had an idea of what the Braves were and how much I liked them, and was ready to defend them so much that when I was in preschool in Savannah, I wanted to wear my Braves hat to class, and my teacher wouldn't let me. So I led a small revolt with my classmates, and we ended up just like destroying a lot of we had a bunch of papers on our little desks, and I won't say I led it, but I didn't stop it, and we ended up messing up all the papers on our desks because I wanted to wear my Braves hat, and that kind of continued. My family moved to the suburbs of Atlanta in '95, so I guess Braves winning that championship, I'll take a small part of the credit for that. But ever since then, I guess I got to take a lot of the blame. But I do remember that night that the Braves won the World Series, and I remember just hearing our neighbors literally walking outside and doing the cliche of like banging pots and pans together. They couldn't find anything else to do. They couldn't find any other way to make the most noise possible. And I remember that night. I remember hearing that, and I remember my parents just celebrating that with me. And it's been all downhill ever since. But but that but that night, I do count myself lucky as someone that lives in Atlanta that, all due respect to Atlanta United, but my stance on Atlanta United, I love what they've done. I don't discount their championship whatsoever, but they have no original sin as a franchise that ever let us down. And the fact that I'm able to say that I do remember one of Atlanta's teams winning a championship after some really tough years, I'm glad that I at least have that to fall back on and enjoy as a memory.
See, that's what I love about your perspective and your experiences, how it ties back to Atlanta. Really speaking from the viewpoint of a fan. One last question for you guys. When we talk about being in the media, it's supposed to be ambivalent, it's supposed to be very neutral. Deep down, we're all fans of somebody and somewhere. So, John, what is the worst acquisition that your sports team ever committed?
I'm unmuting him right now. We just had a little feedback on.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
The worst acquisition, and I'm going to use this from a Falcons perspective. Again, many of you that follow me know I worked for, did sideline radio for the team for 9 years. Shout out to Wes and Dave, the greatest play-by-play and color combo in the league. But I'll never forget, I was working at the now defunct 790 The Zone, and the Falcons signed this guy named Ray Edwards. And, oh, my goodness, we found our new pass rusher, 5 years and $30-some-odd million, and he's built like a Greek god. And Bob Richards, who was our program director at the time, I was doing afternoons with Mike Bell and Dave Archer. It was the 6-hour extravaganza that was Archer, Bell, and Michaels. So my job as the third wheel on that team when Ray Edwards was signed was we did Ray Edwards watch. So I literally was standing, and you guys all know where the Falcons come out at Flowery Branch to run onto the practice field. Well, of course, Ray Edwards had to make a fashionably late entrance. He didn't just run out with the entire team. So I'm standing out there with my stupid camera phone taking pictures of Ray Edwards running onto the practice field. And then I'd have to sprint back to the parking lot where the Falcons had us situated to do our radio show, throw the headphones on. Ray Edwards just came out. Awesome. He looks so big and beautiful. And he's ready. It was the most ridiculous thing ever. And this candy ass gave us 1.5 sacks in 1.5 years or some nonsense like that. And then he was cut his second year on the team for conduct detriment. I guess he just didn't want to work hard enough to be on the team. He's the worst signing for me in Falcon history. Like, Steven Jackson was bad enough. I told everybody on the radio he wasn't the right guy. But Ray Edwards, oh my goodness. I know he's an MMA fighter or an underwear model or whatever the hell he does now. I'll never forget having to cover that candy ass for a year and a half, who gave the team about as much as I would have given him had I put on shoulder pads and a helmet.
Yes. I would have went with Perlis Price if you're talking about that era, but I think Ray's a respectable disappointment. Wes, what about you?
I'd say when I really first started forming some sports opinions as an indication and a goal that I was going to pursue this career, I do remember the day that the Braves traded Mark Teixeira. I remember where I was, and that may not be one that really jumps off the page for a lot of people, but for me, I was about to go into college. It was the summer before I went into college, and I knew I wanted to get into sports media, and I just remember that was the first one that I just remember it just kind of made me sick. And it kind of started the beginning of the tail end. If you want to look at it, it didn't start it, but it was kind of one of those hallmark moments for the Braves moving away from that legacy that they had and missing out on some of the opportunities that they had. We have a long list in Atlanta, and that one for me, because it was kind of in my formative years as someone that was about to enter this crazy industry, this crazy world of sports media and sports journalism. When the Braves traded Mark Teixeira away, it didn't make much sense. And of course, he goes to the Angels, and it just, I don't know, it never made much sense to me. Still referred as a pretty linchpin moment for when the Braves started to crumble. And I'm glad that they're starting to rebuild and figure things back out now, but that late 2000s, early 2010s time was very dark for a Braves fan.
Perfect, because heartbreak is part of being a sports fan in Atlanta. Jason, who is your team, and what was the worst acquisition they made?
So as a kid, I liked all the Atlanta teams as a kid, and I'd say the most devastating to me as a basketball guy when I was really little was when the Hawks traded Dominique Wilkins. I mentioned my first memory was the Fab Five, and that would have been 91, 92. So I'm watching the NBA. I'm getting into Michael Jordan, and of course the Bulls were my bandwagon second favorite team. You had to watch MJ when he's playing, but I was loyal to Atlanta. So, I rooted for the Hawks, and the Hawks were one of the best teams that year, I remember. And then they traded the best player in franchise history. And I remember as a kid, you don't understand the business side of things when you're a little kid, but I just remember just being devastated and thinking, like, why would you do such a silly thing? I think, you're not thinking that he's at the tail end of his career at that point or anything like that, but I hated it. And of course they did what the Hawks do and lost in the second round of the playoffs. It's just kind of standard whenever the Hawks reach the postseason. So, but that to me was the real devastating blow. I will say that the Ray Edwards acquisition is probably the worst acquisition in maybe the history of Atlanta sports. It really comes down to they signed him, he got his bonus, and if you talk to people in the building about Ray Edwards, it's just to this day there is still anger about the fact that they actually brought him in and they ended up getting the kind of output they got because. Yeah, he basically got cut for being a total joke of a athlete in terms of work ethic, and that's people in that building to this day refer to that. So John hit it right on the head with him.
Perfect. So I hope this gives the listeners, the new and old listeners, some insight to who we are, the experience, and our perspective.
Yeah, I think it does. And I think there are already a lot of people that know what we're about. They already know what we bring to the table. They know our skill sets. They know what to expect when they follow us and from our work. And that will continue to speak for itself. That's not going to change. I think it's just exciting to be working with a team again and working with some people that have different ideas and have different skill sets because we got everything covered. What else could you want from us? We're going to have live streams. We're going to have print. We're going to have podcasts. We're going to have social media, a big presence there. And really what I hope anyone that's listening to this and watching this takes away from it is we're inviting all of you to interact with us, just like we're interacting with each other. I think when I look at where media is today, and when I look at where social media is today, we have a lot of people that are just kind of shouting their opinions out and shouting at each other and shouting at people. But we want to really have dialogues. We want to talk to you. We want to open up those avenues. There's too much now that has happened because of COVID when it comes to social media interactions. Like, look at us now on a Zoom call. There are too many platforms like that that we could utilize to not have good conversations and not hear from the people that are listening to us, because this isn't just us shouting at you and giving you our hot takes. Like, we want to hear from you. We want to talk to you, and we want to really feel what this Atlanta sports community has to offer, because as bad as things have been by and large for our teams and for our franchises, I think we would take just a little bit of the torment over not watching sports right now. So does anyone else have anything they want to offer? Any closing thoughts before we wrap up this episode and move forward into greatness?
I love what you said right there, Wes. I think what's been lost in sports media over the last probably 5 to 10 years is the interaction with fans. And it's not the fact that stations don't take phone calls or writers don't respond to, the comments in their section. It's become so toxic between the media, the fans, and the athletes themselves. And I actually wrote an article that was published today on Barrett Sports Media. If you follow him, he basically talks about the business that we're in. And I said one of the things that's been lost from our aspect is the trust between the athlete and the media member, because the gotcha moment is out there. Everybody has a smartphone. Everybody has the ability to record stuff. So I think there's too many people out there that are trying to get everybody and get that 20 or 30 seconds of fame where they've got a video of something. What I wanted to get back to with this, is giving people good content. I know the two guys that I brought that, we're kind of collabing with Jason and Wes are going to give you great content. That's just who they are. They've got journalistic integrity. I can't say that my content was always great. I could say my content was usually entertaining, and that's something in this business that we've lost as well. But I also want to get back to the ability to talk to fans and talk to people that are fans of the team, and not talking at them, but talking with them. Because I think what gets lost in social media a lot now is somebody has a difference of opinion of you, and I know I fall victim to this as well. And we start screaming our opinion at them, and we never actually sit down to have the dialogue or take the time to listen. If you guys are, willing enough to give us the chance and subscribe to this service at tacklermedia.com, look at the product that we put out. This is a business that'll grow. It's not just going to be the three of us forever. There'll be time that we're going to bring other people on board that equal the skill set that we have and continue to grow the business. But I think this can be an outlet that you're not getting anywhere else in the Southeast. You're not getting it from the local newspaper. You're not necessarily getting it from the two radio stations in town. You're not getting it from the other outlets that are going to charge you subscription base. You're talking about three guys that have been in this business, three guys that have covered all of the teams, and three guys that are willing to sit down and talk with just about anybody. And I think that's kind of my vision for this. Jamal mentioned something earlier on that I think he hit spot on. We are in the hub of college football. Like, this is the crossroads of the ACC and the SEC. College football does not get covered enough in this town, period. Georgia's a top 5 team, yet they're usually second or third in the pecking order in the sports lexicon. Alabama's 3 hours down the road. The University of Florida's 4 hours down the road, although I don't suggest going down there ever. But Clemson's 90 minutes up the road. Why is it not being, carpet bombed college football coverage? And that's one of the things I'm going to be able to branch out more than I had in the past. I did a lot of Falcon stuff at the various radio stations I've worked at. I want to do more college football stuff, and I vow on this site I'm going to give you a ton of college football conversation, and it won't just be the University of Miami.
Hell yeah. Jason, got anything?
Yeah. It's y'all, you guys said it best. I mean, I'm excited when it comes to the ideas that we can all formulate as people with, similar interests but differing backgrounds. You put a radio guy, a TV guy, and a writer together, and to me, I think some people might say, "Well, that's silly," but I like the differences where we can attack different topics at different angles, where we can go find stories. We can go through our, the old school way would be a Rolodex, but we have all the contacts in our phones that we can scroll through and still provide the kind of information that you would get in traditional media, but in a new and more updated, modern fashion. And it's in the times we live in, things have changed. In some respects, they're never going to be the same. I think that we're going to take various whether it's ideas or strategies or just ways of life from this experience we're all living in right now. A lot of it's probably going to carry over when things return to a sense of normalcy. But I think at the end of the day, in some respects, when you're in our position and you kind of see what's happened around and how the industry has had to adjust yet again, it seems like there's never been a better time to take a risk when it comes to a sports media venture. And so that's something I'm looking forward to really come up with ideas with you guys and really provide the best kind of content that the city of Atlanta's seen in quite some time.
One last thing, and I think we launch at a perfect time. We've gone now 3+ months without regular team sports. I know the UFC and golf and some other smaller sports are coming back. But think about the coverage that we're going to be able to give come July 24th when baseball opens, basketball opens 2 days later, NFL training camp comes right after that. 3 guys that have been here, that have connections, have credentials. We're going to be able to be all over it. And Wes, you said it best. No constraints of a program director or a news director or an editor standing over us going, no, you can't do that. We can do whatever the hell we want. We can do it however the hell we want, and we're going to do it better than anybody else that's around here.
Yeah. Before I wrap, just to speak to that point, from my background specifically, local news, sports, even in a market like Atlanta, we were just criminally underrepresented content-wise, coverage-wise. We had one show on Sunday night that was half an hour, but beyond that, we had a 3-minute sports block. I am just so excited to have the time to flesh out the ideas and the stories and the content, because I think I'm just in my role as part of this team. I can't wait to serve our audience that way and really have the freedom from a time standpoint, if nothing else, to present that information and to share it with everyone. It looks like we lost Jamal. I think this is a good time to wrap. I know we'll find Jamal again. It's just time to wrap up, I guess. But I appreciate y'all listening. Can't wait to talk to you, present content, tell stories for you, and listen to you. Can't wait to listen to everyone that's listening to us. So check out tacklermedia.com and consider subscribing. We'll present written content, links to podcasts. It won't just be this show. Down the road, it'll be Jason rolling out a show, John rolling out a show, and having the ability to showcase our skill sets and our abilities and our style of communicating with the Atlanta market and the Southeast as a whole. So hope y'all have a great week. Make it great for somebody else, and it's going to be fun. Talk to y'all soon.